Coming up on Network Africa, the UN peacekeeping mission in the Democratic Republic of Congo warns of the deteriorating situation in the country. Ghana passes a controversial e-tax bill into law as opposition to fight legislation in court. Plus, the UNHCR expects prolonged flooding and displacement of people in South Sudan to worsen as the wet season begins in May. Hello and welcome to the program today. I'm Layo Adegoke. We begin in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where the M23 rebel group has denied shooting down a UN helicopter that crashed on Sunday while carrying peacekeepers on a reconnaissance mission in the northeastern region. Well, this denial comes after DRC's army accused the rebels of shooting down the aircraft, but the rebels say the plane was shot down by the army while they were attacking their positions. At least 8 people are said to have been on board, mostly Pakistani UN peacekeepers. The plane had disappeared in the Chanzu area. In the meantime, the Pakistani military has released the identities of 6 soldiers who were killed, even as the United Nations says investigation is underway.
Some sad news from our peacekeeping mission in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. A search and rescue operation was launched after a Puma helicopter lost contact with our colleagues and crashed. The helicopter with 8 people on board, including 6 crew members, all from the Pakistani military, and 2 military personnel, 1 from the Russian Federation and 1 from the Republic of Serbia. They were on a reconnaissance mission in the area of Chanzu, southeast of Rutshuru in North Kivu. There have been clashes there between the M23 armed group and the Congolese armed forces in the recent days.
Meanwhile, thousands of people are being displaced by the clashes between M23 rebel groups and the DR Congo's army in the eastern region of the country. These clashes have continued after attacks on Sunday against positions in Chanzu and Runyonyi, that's in the North Kivu province. The heavy fighting was reported to have left some Congolese soldiers injured and has forced dozens of locals to flee.
Many have been driven from their homes in the Democratic Republic of Congo after the M23 rebel group attacked army positions near the border with Uganda and Rwanda. Heavy fighting started on Sunday night, and by Tuesday, the rebels had moved into the city of Kambindi and were nearing the area's local administrative seat, the town of Rutshuru.
We're just trying to get away from the fighting. We were just in our homes when we heard bullets and explosions, so we just ran.
Uganda Red Cross said on Tuesday that some 60,000 refugees had crossed into Uganda from 6 villages near the border.
We were just told that M23 have come back again. They emerged from the forest to attack the Congolese government. At the moment, we're just seeing government forces driving up and down the road, but we don't have a solution yet.
In the face of the deteriorating security situation in the country, the head of the UN peacekeeping mission in the Democratic Republic of Congo, MONUSCO, is advocating for a combination of approaches that address both causes and symptoms. Steps that will also make sure UN resources and those of the Congolese military will remain sufficient. Addressing the Security Council, MONUSCO Chief Bintou Keita stressed that the security situation in the DRC has continued to deteriorate with a rise in civilian casualties and population displacements. In addition to existing challenges, Keita also warned council members about an alarming resurgence of activities by the M23 armed group.
Nous devons cependant être réalistes et regarder la réalité en face.
We must be realistic and face the facts. Without a combination of approaches that address both causes and symptoms, our resources and those of the Congolese army will remain insufficient in the face of such a deteriorating security situation. This illustrates the inherent limitations of relying solely on security operations to resolve these conflicts. While I condemn in the strongest terms the attacks by armed groups against civilian populations, I reiterate my call for the government to implement comprehensive political strategies, including measures and reforms that address the root and structural causes of these conflicts, and that will make it possible to achieve stabilization and lasting peace.
The M23 rebel group seized large swaths of territory during an insurrection in 2012 and 2013 before its fighters were chased into neighboring Uganda and Rwanda by United Nations forces. M23 fighters have since come back to wage attacks, including one in the same part of Congo in November. United Nations investigators have previously accused Rwanda and Uganda of supporting the group, which both countries have denied. There have been regional efforts in recent years to have the M23 demobilized, but its leaders have complained about the slow implementation of a peace accord and accused the Congolese army of waging war against it.
The United Nations Refugee Agency, UNHCR, is warning of a dire impact from floods in South Sudan, even as a new wet season looms. Prolonged flooding and displacement are expected to worsen when the wet season begins in May. Returning from a visit to South Sudan's most affected areas, Special Advisor on Climate Action to UNHCR, Andrew Harper, said that parts of the country are still affected by high water levels from last year's flooding, and the rains forecasts for 2022 are expected to be even worse than last year.
In South Sudan, help is urgently needed ahead of the rainy season for the most vulnerable among 835,000 people hit by flooding in the world's youngest nation. UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency, warns that prolonged flooding and displacement in South Sudan is expected to worsen when the wet season begins in May. Therefore, urgent action is needed to protect already vulnerable populations from its worst impacts. 33 of South Sudan's 79 counties have been badly affected by flooding. Thousands of people have been displaced, while others are marooned in dike-ringed compounds holding back floodwaters with mud, sticks and plastic sheeting. Residents need water pumps and heavy equipment to build sturdy flood barriers and keep their livestock above water.
We're looking at communities struggling to cope, to mitigate, to resist the impact of climate change and extreme weather events. We need to advocate for development actors to provide support directly to the communities. They need heavy machinery. It's pumps, it's excavators, it's shovels. So if these dikes do fail, that they have a chance to resist the impact of climate change, much of which has got nothing to do with them. It's because of countries who have been unable to wean themselves off the carbon excesses, but the impacts are being held here, where the most vulnerable people are doing the most in order to maintain their communities, maintain their livelihoods. And these floodwaters have been here for 2 to 3 years and they're not going down. What happens when we see the next rains coming in the next 2 or 3 months?
Amid a backdrop of climate events that are worsening globally, UNHCR warned that floods and droughts are becoming more frequent and intense, and that catastrophic food insecurity is looming.
The other issue that will be coming to the fore is the food insecurity. As you have crops wiped out, as you have livestock dying, season after season, you have this compounded series of disasters and a lack of international response in terms of providing support for food security, then you will be facing the situation of a famine in that region. I don't think it's if but it's going to be when.
South Sudan, a fragile country struggling to overcome political and economic challenges since it gained independence in 2011, had its worst flooding on record in 2021, and the rains forecast for 2022 are expected to be even worse.
In a bid to contribute to poverty alleviation, a Nigerian school is targeting students from poor families to give them a chance to excel at science, technology, engineering and mathematics for 100 naira fee a day, hoping they can hone skills that can help their families climb out of poverty. Faridat Bakare is one of them, a 12-year-old student who's developed a solar-powered prototype car as she sets her eyes on becoming an engineer.
A Nigerian school is targeting students from poor families to give them a chance to excel at science, maths and engineering for a fee of 100 naira a day, hoping they can hone skills to help their families escape poverty. One student, 12-year-old Faridat Bakare, who enrolled at Nosk Secondary School in Abuja in 2020, a year after it opened, has set her sights on becoming an engineer. In the technical lab at the school, she shows off a prototype for a solar-powered car made from boards, which she developed with her classmates.
I want to become an electrical engineer who works with robots, solar panels and all the connection of all the snap circuits, all things like that.
North School runs largely on donations, and school officials visit each family to establish that they have no capacity to pay full fees, which would work out at 66,000 naira a term.
When we decided to run the North School, we had to ask ourselves, what kind of education does the poor man's child need to break out of poverty? That's what we set out to do. We didn't set out to open a classroom and say, oh, there's another new school for poor children. No. We said, how can we fuse into learning for the poor enough value that they can break out of poverty?
For the 100 naira a day fee they pay, students are given uniforms, books, lunch, and girls are given sanitary pads once a month.
We will continue a generation of millions of people that are not very literate, that are not very productive, that will continually remain under the poverty line and perpetuate another generation of poverty. And I'm saying there's something we can do about it. We can't reach everybody, but for every one child that we can get out of the street and give this empowering education, I see it is victory and it's a great, great contribution to building a great nation and just society.
At least 10.5 million children in Nigeria do not attend school, and that's the highest rate in the world. Most affected are girls, children with disability, and those from poor households. Students at North spend 75% of their time studying science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And when they graduate, each student has to develop a prototype of something they can use or pursue after school.
I didn't know how to use the laptop, the monitors, and all this. So now in the North Sudan school, I've made solar car, I've made solar itself, and I've used solar to charge a phone.
Her mother, Fawzat Bakare, sells cassava grains at the Kuje market, an outdoor market mostly for local foodstuff and household items in Abuja. North School runs a rigorous competitive selection process that takes between 3 to 5 months before a student is finally taken in. The goal for the Bangwells is to set up more of such schools in Nigeria and the rest of Africa.
Still ahead on the program. The Black Stars of Ghana receive a warm welcome amid celebrations for the country's qualification to the 2022 Qatar World Cup. Welcome back to the program. The Commission on the Status of Women, CSW, has adopted agreed conclusions on achieving gender equality and the empowerment of all women and girls in the context of climate change, environmental and disaster risk reduction policies and program. Well, that's according to South African Ambassador Matu Joyini, who is the head of the Commission's 66th session, who says actionable measures and steps have been agreed to that will give world leaders a blueprint on promoting issues of women and girls. She adds that the Commission on the Status of Women reaffirms the Beijing Declaration and platform for action.
The first time the Commission on Status of Women has adopted agreed conclusion on gender equality and empowerment of all women and girls in the context of climate change and environmental and disaster risk reduction policies and programs. So that has not been done before. So there's been specific and actionable measures and steps that have been agreed to, really that will give member states, but not only member states, I think world leaders, a blueprint on promoting the issues of women and girls in the space of climate change, especially the full participation of women and girls in whatever is going on around the world in our countries at a national level on climate change and environmental and disaster risk reduction policies and programs. The first area is around integrating gender perspective into climate change, environmental disaster risk reduction policies and programs. This is where, when you look at your frameworks, at a global level, at a national level, at a regional level, to say to what extent are these frameworks taking into account a gender lens or a gender perspectives, national laws and policy frameworks, to what extent are they doing that? So that's the first area. So quite a number of measures and steps that are in the agreed conclusion talks to integrating gender perspectives into those frameworks and national laws.
Good morning, colleagues.
Nearly 120 asylum seekers have been evacuated from Libya to Rwanda in the first of such flights of the year. Well, the group of men, women and children, the youngest is less than 1 year old, were from Eritrea, Sudan, South Sudan and Somalia. Most of them had been living in urban areas of Libya's capital, Tripoli, and others had been arbitrarily held in detention, some for several months. The group evacuated on Tuesday night will join another 269 refugees and asylum seekers in Gashora, where the UN Refugee Agency provides assistance, including shelter, food and medical care. Detainees in several Libyan migrant centers have previously described routine torture, rape, malnutrition and the spread of diseases because of conditions they are forced to endure there. Moving on to Ghana now, the opposition has said it will contest a law introducing a controversial new tax on electronic payments at the Supreme Court. The Electronic Transaction Levy, e-levy bill, was approved by Parliament on Tuesday, and it was considered under a certificate of urgency and was adopted at a reduced rate of 1.5% from the proposed 1.75%. Opposition MPs had refused to participate in that vote and they staged a walkout, describing the tax as unfair. However, the Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta defended the bill, saying it would bring in projected revenues of $930 million per year. President Nana Akufo-Addo's government also said the move will help address Ghana's high public debt. The government recently announced sweeping spending cuts to tackle the deficit. It's blaming worsening economic hardships on the COVID-19 pandemic and the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Joy News TV parliamentary correspondent Kwesi Parker-Wilson joins us now for more. Hello, Kwesi.
Hello.
Well, talk to us about the impact of this e-tax bill that has now been passed into law, much to the disappointment of opposition members.
Well, that's correct. I must say that the opposition members, particularly the NDC, are super disappointed and also incensed with the way the bill was actually approved, or the levy was approved in Parliament. First of all, they had raised concerns about how it was introduced, because if you come to Parliament, and here in Ghana, you have the order paper, which actually talks about the business for the day, what the House will be discussing. And if you look at the business for this week, there was no mention of the controversial e-levy. So it came to them as a huge surprise when the majority members of the House decided or elected to consider the bill. However, they stood through. They going to stage a walkout. They wanted Ghanaians and the people around the world who have been monitoring this e-levy closely to know that they were not part of it, so they were going to abstain from it. Now, the reasons have been given that they did not have the required numbers. That is from the minority side. And here, there is a hung parliament. The majority side has about 138 MPs, with the opposition side also having 137. And our standing orders are clear. The rules and procedures in the House are quite clear, that when a motion is a tie, or the motion is lost. And so in order for them not to witness defeat, because they have remained with the people of this country for the past 3 or 4 or 5 months on this e-levy, they decided to stage a walkout. Now, the point is that at the time, they only had 136 members in the House on the side of the minority. They did not have the numerical strength to fight the e-levy. And so they fouled out. And then the majority side had about 136, approved it. And is the reason he indicated earlier that they are in court today. In fact, we've seen the writs. They are challenging the approval of the levy. They have described it as a nullity and illegality, and does not find any space within the parliamentary democracy we have in this country. And so they are bent and have vowed that the Supreme Court should assure that they rescind the decision of Parliament, the illegality that was perpetrated or orchestrated by the House, by a one-sided majority House, and so that the people of this country will not get the relief. So that has been the conversation going on in this country. And with the impact, I must say that normal people on the street, ordinary Ghanaians, are not excited about it. In fact, even before introduction, many were raising concerns about the levy because of how the processes would be, sending money via Momo and the detection and all of that. They were not happy about it. So even after the approval, a lot of Ghanaians are not happy. The only thing that they sought comfort in yesterday was the fact that the Black Stars, of course, defeated your national team in Nigeria. And that was the only thing that Ghanaians are today excited about. But I'm sure that after a few days,
we'd have to wait and see how it pans out, from the courts. We know the opposition is taking it to court. We'll wait and see how it all pans out. But thank you so much, Kwesi Parker-Wilson, Joy News TV parliamentary correspondent. Well, just like Kwesi had said, Nigeria was not able to secure its World Cup spot at Qatar, and this was much to the disappointment of many Nigerians on the street. Football fans in Nigeria have been reacting to that. Let's have this next report.
Ghana have done it. Ghana have qualified for the World Cup.
The qualification of Ghana for this year's FIFA World Cup in Qatar means Nigeria will be missing at the competition. The reality of the failure of the Super Eagles to qualify for the World Cup dawns on the football fans. The headlines from the newspapers capture the mood of many Nigerians as they are forced to watch the World Cup in the Gulf nation without their team.
We believe that we can qualify for this tournament. But now, so everybody was down because we don't know, because everybody were not happy at all. So we're not happy. So maybe because initially we thought that maybe the game will be very easy for us. But now, so we are very, very disappointed.
Our players are playing as if there is no hunger. They underrated Ghanaians because of their poor performance in the Nations Cup, and they think it's going to be a rollover or walkover. So that's why we find ourselves in that situation, because I can't expect us to get they have scored us 3 minutes in the game. It means we not put our acts together. We believe we are going to through because we have gotten a 0-0 draw in Kumasi. So I expect our people to come out and play with anger.
The conduct of the fans at the MKO Abiola National Stadium in Abuja after the game comes under heavy scrutiny.
If we cannot control fans in a single game, then how can we host big tournaments like Nations Cup, like World Cup? It tells. It goes a long way to put, decimations on our security arrangement. It's appalling. It's not accepted, and it's bad. It's a bad development because the world are watching, and tomorrow we want to apply to host this game, They make recourse to what has just happened, because we should grow past this now.
The Super Eagles will be missing the World Cup for the first time since 2006, when they failed to reach the tournament in Germany. Ghana's football players and staff arrived home early today to rapturous welcome after becoming the first African nation to reach the 2022 World Cup in Qatar. Well, they were met at the airport with bottles of champagne, and even President Nana Akufo-Addo congratulated the coach in a phone call for what he called the perfect birthday gift. 29th of March is the president's birthday. He turned 78.
That's right, that's right.
And that's it on the program today. Thank you for watching. I'm Layo Adegoke.